Well, welcome to Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross. I am your host and resource for self-care, connections, and collaborations. And today we are going to discover the secrets to overcoming overwhelm and achieving optimal wellness with Megan North, a renowned speaker and certified health and wellness coach. With a unique blend for practical strategies and compassionate support, Megan empowers women in business to break free from limiting beliefs and attain their goals. So without further ado, let's bring on Megan. Megan, thank you for being with us here today.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
I'm so glad you're able to do this. Megan, can you share a bit about your personal journey that led you to become a renowned health and wellness coach?
Sure. So I'm the youngest of six, and there's a significant difference between myself and the eldest. So there's 17 years between myself and my eldest sibling, and there's 8 years between me and the next one. So there's 5 of them, and then there's me. I always say that mum and dad stopped at perfection. And And so I grew up in a very busy household, but grew up in an adult world. I was always a lot further ahead, I think, than probably all of my friends. And I always remember when I went to school, and all through my schooling life, I used to say to my mum, everybody at school is so immature because anyone at my age wasn't really in the mindset of where I was. I was always looking to the future and talking to adults and those sort of things. So I had a pretty normal upbringing, great family, great siblings, and now the family is very big with lots of nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews. I got married in my early 20s, and I was married to my first husband for 18 years, and we parted amicably, and I then went on a journey of self-discovery for myself. So I spent a lot of time on my own. And it was interesting because I realized that when I got divorced and left that home at 36, I'd never lived on my own before, because I'd lived at home with my parents and then I moved in with my husband. So it was a really interesting time for me. It was very much a self-discovery. And a couple of years after I got divorced, I actually stopped drinking. And for me, that's when a lot of mental health came in the sense of there was a lot of dark times because the alcohol wasn't masking anything anymore. And I needed to really face all of the things that I needed to, but I wanted to face and to deal with through growing up and my marriage ending and all of those sort of things. So it's quite interesting because it was like the stopping drinking then got me real clarity, but it was also sort of a dark place that I had to go. It's weird to say that me stopping drinking, I went into a dark place, but actually I did, because there was nothing else to mask what was going on. And then in 2014, my beautiful mum passed away both suddenly and unexpectedly. And so that was a real shock, and something that none of us ever expected. And it's a really strange thing. I've lost mum and now dad as well. And it's a weird thing to think. I always expected my grandparents to die, but never my parents. I just think you always think your parents are always going to be around.
Yeah, and I can relate to that. We recently lost my father unexpectedly. And it's just, and I lost my husband years ago, and I'm sorry for your loss, but yeah, I know what you mean. It's just like, okay, yeah, you expect people older than them to go, but you don't necessarily expect your parents. But
yeah,
sorry, no, please continue. Yeah, I can relate to that. I'm sure a lot of people can.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And so mum passed in the beginning of 2014, and then a few things had happened for me from a work perspective and a few other things. And so toward the end of 2014, I was in a really, really dark place and was deciding whether I wanted to continue on or not. And there was a few moments in my life where I was seriously thinking whether I wanted to continue on or not. And so it was a moment in my time where I realized that actually only I can change my life. Only I can make the changes to move myself out of the space that I'm in. it's up to me. You know, people can be telling you you should be doing this and why don't you do that? But until a person is ready, nothing changes. And so I had a moment that I just realized that actually this is up to me. And then I also had this moment where I thought, only I can lead myself out of this space. And then I thought, it was quite an interesting moment. Then I thought, hang on a minute, I've worked in HR and in corporate, human resources and corporate for more than 20 years. And all I've done is worked with leaders and senior leaders and employees, and I've helped them with their leadership journeys. And I realized that I've got this huge toolkit of leadership strategies and ideas and tips that actually I can use for myself to lead myself out of this place. And so that's where leading self came. And it was then a journey, a new journey that I went on in relation to sort of getting out of the dark place and moving into now where I am, where I'm a very different person. And we'll talk about leading self a little bit later, I'm sure, but it was then a journey of where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And I worked in HR for still quite a long period of time, but then I got to a point where I thought I would like to start working for myself, and I would like to become more involved in the health and wellness space and become an advocate for mental health. And all of the experience that I've had myself, I feel like that then I can help others as well. So that's where my journey has led me to today.
What would you say actually sparked? I mean, there's a number of things in there, but what do you think mostly sparked your interest and passion in the mental health and wellness?
I think it was probably reflection on then where I was and the stuff that I was going through myself. And it's a very lonely place to be when you're not in a great mental health space, because there's many emotions. You feel ashamed, you feel like you're a failure, you feel embarrassed, you feel like you're not good enough, you don't feel like you can talk to anybody, you don't feel like there's any help. It's a very, very lonely space. And I realized after I started to talk about this, and to be honest, this is something that I've only started sort of talking to even my family about. They had no idea that this was the space that I was in all of those years ago. But I realized that once you have the courage to talk about it, you realize that actually I wasn't the only person in the world going through that at that time. And I think having a conversation and creating space for people to be able to feel and to be honest and to be vulnerable, I think is something that's why I'm really passionate about it. Because when we talk about anything from death to euphoria to happiness, unless you've experienced it yourself, it's a little bit hard to be able to, to relate to other people. So I feel like that because I've been in that space, and I'm a trusted advisor, particularly in the HR world. When I worked with a lot of senior leaders and employees, I was always a trusted advisor. So I know that people do take the time to listen to what I say, and what I can advise them on. So I felt like that could move into the health and wellness space, and particularly mental health.
Yeah, and you do a lot with people who are still working. As a matter of fact, your website's called Wellness While Working. Can you tell us more about your unique approach, that you call Wellness While Working, and how does it help your clients?
I think because I've had a 20-odd year career in corporate and HR, I know I can completely relate. I can completely relate to being a woman in corporate, in feeling that you're not good enough, in feeling that you don't put your hand up, that you feel that if you're overwhelmed, and a lot of my clients talk to me about this, that when they're overwhelmed, they don't want to admit it at work because there's that fear and that underlying fear, particularly in big corporate organizations, that then you're going to get passed over for a promotion, or people are going to think that you're just being emotional. There's so much stigma around the way that we feel, and particularly as women, I think that we feel it a lot. And a lot of, I don't have children, but a lot of my clients that I work with do have children. And I know that the pressures, and I hear about the pressures of trying to be a mother and then trying to build a career and trying to be a wife and, all of those sort of things, or a partner, spouse, can just add on. And that's where I talk with Overwhelm, there's this, then there's this, then there's this, then there's this, and it just piles on and on and on. And so when we're talking about wellness while working, it's about how can you turn up to work as your best self? And how can you turn up to work as your best self even when you've got another 100 things going on? And it's about tools and strategies and those sort of things, because we spend a lot of time at work. There's a lot of expectation on us when we're at work. And so I feel like that I have had to, in 2014, I was working, but I was in a really dark place and I had to turn up every day and pretend that there was nothing wrong. And so, yeah, I feel like that all of that experience is then helps me to relate to what my clients are going through.
Yeah, and everyone handles everything differently, and some do better than others. Like when I lost my husband 18 years ago, I did their 7 days bereavement. I tried to go back to work and stuff, and it was not working. I wound up on short-term disability, yet I know others that lost a husband and could turn around. They just threw themselves into work and went right back to work. I always say it's judgment-free because there's no right or wrong. You have to do what's right for you. But I'm sure in HR, you probably also dealt with many different situations from people that went through that. So you kind of have also some experience of what they were going through or the support that they needed.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that it's one of the things that I'm trying to constantly evolve around myself and the way that I am as a coach, because I'm not everything to everybody. And one of the comments that I made before is I don't have children. So I've actually just moved my coaching into group coaching, because I'm finding that women who are overwhelmed love to be in a tribe because you love that community feel, but also they can also talk to other women in the group who do have children, because I can't stand up there and say, well, you should be doing this, and why aren't you going to bed at 10 o'clock? And, because I've got no right to do that, because I haven't experienced that myself.
Mm-hmm.
But also I can't also stand there and expect to be the expert for everybody either. I'm still learning about myself, and I still learn things that I hear that worked for somebody else, and I tried it myself and I think, oh, I don't like that. So it's a constant, when you're coaching, it's a constant evolution of working with a client to go, okay, well, I could have 5 people with the exact same issue, but we deal with things completely differently. And so I'm always trying to be in my authenticity, to say, okay, well, I can teach you and share with you some tools and things that have worked, but doesn't necessarily mean that I'm the expert either.
Right. And we are all different. And that's, I always tell people, I said, we're all in a constant journey and we're constantly learning. If there's someone around that thinks they're not, then it's probably generally not the person I want to be around, because we're all growing and we're all learning, and we can learn from each other, as well. Clients
Absolutely.
can bring a different perspective to you too, that maybe you didn't think of. It's just, to me, it's about don't be judging and being open-minded.
Absolutely. Like, I learned so much from my clients. I love it. It's fantastic. And things that it's really interesting too, because as well as being a health and wellness coach, I'm also an energy healer. So I'm very good at tuning in, and things come to me and things happen that I think, okay, that wasn't a coincidence. But it's interesting that sometimes I'm dealing with something and then I get a new client and they're wanting me to coach them on something that actually I'm working on myself, and I love it, because then I think, okay, well, this is great. I can guide you and mentor you, but actually some of the things that they come up with, then I think, oh, I might try that myself. But I'm honest, but I'm open and honest with them too, and I'll tell them, it's really funny that you've come to me to work on this, because it's something I'm working on too. So I'm constantly in my authentic self, and my clients are my inspiration. I love it. The stuff that they teach me as much as what I can share and teach them as well. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. And I think that's so important to be authentic. And, because when you're coaching people, I mean, we all put the label coaching on it, but it's a lot of times it's not that we're telling them anything new or helping them with anything new. It's just coming from a different perspective, maybe. And it's having that support, having someone to talk to and, help you along with it. So yeah, it's really kind of a support system.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I said. Like, I'm your cheerleader. I'm on the journey with you. I'm not here to tell you what you need to do. I'm here to be by your side and walk the walk with you and be part of your journey and give you some guidance and share some things that I've learned or that I understand may help. But I'm not here to just tell you what to do. And I usually do a discovery call with a client beforehand, before I start working with them. And there has been a couple of times where they're just like, no, I just need you to tell me what to do. And I'm like, well, I'm probably not the right person for you, because I feel like I always tell my clients is, you've come to me, so you're already halfway through your journey, because you're already halfway there, because you've made the decision, you've realized that something needs to change, and you've made the decision and you've invested in yourself. So you're already halfway there, because that's a big step. But if you then want me to tell you what to do, that's not how it works, because you're not invested in that then. And if it doesn't work, then you're going to blame me, not you. So
yeah. And sometimes, I mean, even though people may say, I want you to tell me what to do, deep down, normally people don't, because normally when people will tell you something to do, you want to do the opposite. You just kind of, it's like, no, who are you to tell me what to do? It's just really, the support. And like you said, unless they're looking for that support, you can't really help them anyway. They have to be ready for it. And I always tell people, I'm like, it's not me to judge whether you want to be in a tiny home or not. My job would be to help get you there. How do you get or obtain what it is that you want? It's not for me to like or understand. It's for you. It's about them.
Exactly. And I had a client earlier this year. She's a doctor. She's given me a great testimonial, and we worked together. And she had this thing in her head that she was a doctor. She had a husband. She had 2 young boys, and she found in the morning that the mornings were chaos, absolute chaos. And so she came to me to get some coaching, and what she wanted, she had it in her head. I need to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning so I can do my journaling, I can meditate, I can do this, I can do that. I'm like, okay, well, let's. So one of the things that I do is we do experiments, or we set goals, but really they're experiments, because you don't know whether it's going to work until you try it.
Right.
And so we set some goals. And week by week, it was quite interesting that we actually got to the point where 6:30 was her sweet spot in the morning, and she would get up, and the shift just in her, because she took all that pressure off herself, because she realized she didn't have to get up at 5 o'clock. The 6:30 was a natural thing for her. She was calmer. She was doing some things in the evening so that then in the morning she didn't have to rush around for the boys. And the house was calmer as well, because she wasn't putting all this pressure on herself. And it was just really lovely to watch that journey, and probably a relief for her too, that when she was oh my gosh, I'm going to have to get up at 5 o'clock every morning. But actually it transposed that it didn't. She found that through the way that so it's interesting, the pressure that we put on ourselves as well. We feel as humans, it fascinates me that we feel like we have to be the best, that we've got to be perfect, that if I'm not doing this one thing, I'm failing. And it fascinates me, because we all feel it. We all feel it. And as humans, I don't know what it is within us. I don't know if it's the way that our brains are wired, or I'm not sure. I'm sure I could do a thesis on it and still probably not work it out. But we're very good at putting our pressure on ourselves, and telling ourselves that we should be doing this and we should be doing that, comparing ourselves to others as well.
Yeah, because 9 times out of 10, we're the ones that do it and put that pressure. No one else is expecting it. You may think they're expecting it, but it's just kind of what we're reading into it and the pressure we put on ourselves for that. You've
Absolutely.
spoken about your commitment to helping those struggle with their mental health. Can you elaborate on how you support them?
I think so. I'm also a mentor for an organisation here in Australia, in New South Wales. So I'm in New South Wales in Australia. That is a organisation that helps women who have just come out of the prison system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm a mentor for one of the candidates that have come out. And so what we do is we help them to get employment, because as soon as you've got a criminal record, it's very, very difficult to find job and all of those sort of things. And a lot of the women have dealt with domestic violence or a terrible time at home, so they've had to do some really dramatic things to leave that home. So I'm not talking to the nth degree of them having murdered anybody. It's more, they've probably done some fraudulent activity because they didn't have any money and they're trying to escape from the home and those sort of things. But I find that when, in particular, in that the mental health does come into it, and particularly the overwhelm for them as well, because they've even got this added pressure onto them too, not just being a woman who's trying to then maybe get the custody of their children back and all of those sort of things, but also then that they've got a criminal record. They may be dealing with addictions and those sort of things as well. It's really sad. And for me, the mentee that I've been working with for the last 12 months, unbelievable what she's done in the last 12 months. I'm extremely proud and feel honoured to be part of her journey. Like, it's been really lovely. So the mental health piece comes in there, but I think it's really interesting because I've never had a client that's come to me and said, I'm in a place where I don't want to move. I don't want to live anymore. I've not had someone like that to come to me. But I think that mental health, I think, is just becoming part of our everyday life. Because if we're not looking after our mental health, then things can feel more overwhelming. They can feel out of control. You can feel like that you can't control what's in your space, what's happening to you. And so from a specific mental health point of view, as I say, I'm an advocate, but part of my program then working with women is about self-care. It's about boundaries. It's about how do you show up and how are you present, and what do you do for your self-care, but also awareness of self. And so all of the things that I work with my clients, the mental health really is just part of what we work with. How are you showing, like, what's your mind saying and doing to yourself? How do you feel about yourself? What do you say when you look in the mirror? Do
Right.
you do affirmations? Sometimes it's even just a basic look in the mirror and tell yourself, until you believe it, that you're amazing and that you're beautiful and that you're worthy. One of the things that I do on all of my social media, probably every few days, is put a post out just to say, you are worthy, you are enough just for you, because we forget that. And
Yes, we
so,
do.
yeah. So I think, and I don't say that just even then for women, I think just generally
Oh,
people
yeah.
never feel like that they're enough and that they're worthy. So I think the mental health piece is in every part of what I do. It's not something separate to what I do, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, it absolutely makes sense. And I always tell people our mind is the most powerful tool we have. And I know you have a self technique that we need to break down and
Mm-hmm.
find out all about that. But right now, we need to take a quick break from our sponsors and we will dive into your self technique as soon as we come back.
Great.
Hi, I'm Bobby Aldridge with BAM Metrics. There are so many programs out there that measure your swing speed, sets, reps, your BMI, your body fat, but the one thing they're not measuring that's so essential is mobility. Mobility is the key. If you're measuring your mobility, your performance will get better and you will reduce your pain. I created BAM metrics to make it easy for people to repeat the exercises so they could do it properly at home on their own. It's simple, it's easy to do, and from a senior to a pro athlete.
Relief for PTSD, anxiety, pain, insomnia, and many other ailments. Introducing Vibe, the world's only pocket PEMF device. You place in your pocket while cooking, cleaning, relaxing, watching TV, sitting at your computer, reading, or walking. Self-contained standalone device. No drugs. No other phone or Bluetooth connections required. No monthly subscription fees. No apps to download. No Bozone. The future of medicine is in the frequencies. Come join the revolution.
Hello, my name is Peter. I'm a Dharma Master. I teach Qigong at the Bright Beings Academy. What kind of Qigong do we teach? Well, to get your mind into your body and you quickly, we really start off with quite quick movements to help cater for the busy Western mind, coming into stretching out the meridians, waking up the chakra system and the danjons, coming into Jigan meditation, which helps you to really focus on the energy in and around your body, bringing you into that beautiful calm state where you can sit and meditate really easily, whereas maybe before you found it really difficult. So Qigong at the Bright Beings Academy will help you get more in touch with yourself.
So, Megan, you have a technique called S.E.L.F.F. I believe it has an extra F on the end. S.E.L.F.F. So maybe you can tell us about about that.
Sure. So
what exactly is that technique, and how does it help in overcoming overwhelm?
Sure. So leading self, S.E.L.F.F. Yes. So it will become apparent in a moment. So this was the technique that I created in 2014 when I was in that dark place, and when I had that revelation of it's up to me to move through and to get the help that I needed, or to make the decision to get the help. So leading self. So S is for sense. So when you're in a moment of overwhelm, sense. So S is the sense. So sense what is going on for you. So what are you hearing or feeling, possibly tasting? What's happening inside of you? Is your stomach churning? Have you got a ringing in your ear? Are your eyes affecting you? What's going on from a sensory point of view? It's really important to identify that, because then when you move into E, which is emotion, it's then identifying what's the emotion that you're actually dealing with at that time. Because when you name an emotion, then you're owning it. You're okay, it's got a name, I understand what it is. And so it's then going, okay. So for me, mine was my biggest piece of my biggest thing that I was dealing with was grief. And so I found that when that comes up for me, I get like a weird ringing in my ears. And then I know, oh, okay, I've got a wave of grief coming. And it wasn't obvious at the time. I've learned to use this tool. Then the L is learn. So learn every single thing you can about that emotion. So what does it do to you, both positive and negative? What does it do to your body? What are the things and the effects that happen to you when you're dealing with this emotion? So for instance, grief, it really affects your brain from an immune point of view, and an immune point of view, and also I'm just trying to think of the word. I'll get it. I'll come back to that. It also can affect the part around your heart. So that can be a temporary thing. And your nervous system as well. So it can really affect your nervous system. So what are the things that grief does to you that actually, so learn all about that, but then also learn what techniques, what tools, what help is around you. So is there counselling around where you live that you can get help with? Is there community groups? Are there groups that you can join that will help you with the grief? Do you know anybody who has dealt with grief that maybe you could talk to and say, how, do you have anything that you could help me with? Or do you have anyone that I could talk to? In Australia, we have a thing called EAP, which is Employee Assistance Program, which the companies pay for free counselling for employees, and it's confidential. So is there an EAP connected to where you work? So so you're learning what it's doing to your body, but you're also then learning where's the help, what are those tools and the strategies that I have got around me that can actually help me with this emotion. And then the FF is future focused. So when this emotion comes up again, what are all the things that you've learned? What's happening to your body? Can you identify it quickly? But then what are the things that you can put in place to help you with that? And I found that the more I've used this tool, so many benefits. Number one, I can identify things really quickly. So it means then I can go, okay, so I've got that ringing in my ear. Okay, I think I'm going to have a wave of grief. Okay, how do I deal with this? What have I just been thinking? Often it could be an anniversary or mum and dad's birthday, or you see something and you think of them. But I know, because I'm so in tune with what that emotion does to me, I can sit with it. I can then go, okay, is this just a passing moment? What are the tools that I've got to help me, so that then I can work through it? And the more you do it, the more you get to know your body, the more you understand yourself, the more you can, I don't want to say stop things as they're happening, because this is not a tool for you to then just ignore what's happened to you. This is a tool to help you to actually recognize what's going on and acknowledge it. Because one of the things that I found with mental health is that you don't want to talk about it, so you just start pushing it down and down and down and ignoring it, or people telling you, oh, you'll get over it, or, just move on, those sort of things as well, which horrify me for people saying that. So this is a tool then that actually, okay, right, okay, I've got some grief coming up. Feel it, allow myself to cry because it was a beautiful memory I had, or allow myself to feel it, to acknowledge it, to sit with it. And then you can actually go, okay, what do I need to do to move forward? Because I always say, I think it's, as humans, we need to feel all of these things, but just don't unpack your bags and stay there. So this tool helps you to just really get to know yourself. Like, it's incredible now. Being an energy healer too, I was already quite in tune with my body, but now when something comes up, I can identify it really quickly and then think, oh, well, what was that triggered that? So it could, could be anger or frustration or something like that. And I think, what did someone say to me that actually triggered that? And then I think, oh, okay, well, maybe I need to do a bit of work on that. So, I'm constantly then working on myself too, to think, someone said that one word to me, that triggered me. I'm really frustrated now because I'm feeling it in my brain. I've gone into my head, my heart's racing. Okay, sit with that. But then why is it that one thing that person said has triggered that frustration in me? Maybe I need to do some work on that.
Yeah. Why did it trigger you? Yeah. I've never heard about, the ringing in years, but I do notice, and I know my mom was worried about it because there was the big articles at the time about, people that die of flat out heartbreak when they lose someone. And I noticed part of my grief when I had mostly anger and kind of a depression thing going, but it would give me chest pains. And then later in life, when I had another situation that was upsetting the balance of my household, I was feeling chest pains. And it's like, okay, I need to fix this. Recognize that this can't go on. And sometimes, you gotta, what I call, put it on your big girl pants and take care of it. And, and what's going to happen is going to happen, but you have to protect yourself instead of worrying about what everyone else is going to think or react.
Correct. Yeah. And what I also learned in the learning phase of getting some counseling and some community groups, you realize that you're not alone. So you're not the only person, because you do feel, when you're feeling anger or grief or frustration, that you feel like you're the only person in the earth that has actually ever felt this, and that you're alone. But you realize that you're not, that it's, and so the more that we can talk about it, and that's why this tool, I'm trying to share it with as many people, because I feel like that it could be for us as adults, but for children as well. Like, I'm more than happy for people who are listening to this, share it with your children and get them to use it as well, because if you can become really in tune with what's happening, there is less chance of you being overwhelmed and having breakdowns and meltdowns and your mental health suffering from it.
Yeah. And I think a big part is knowing that it's okay to not be okay.
Correct.
You know,
Yeah.
we don't, like you said, perfection. We always try to put on that face, but I think that's what causes a lot of problems is, you know, people don't realize it's okay to not be okay. And we don't have to run around and try to fix everybody.
Exactly. And I also think it's a really good point that you make, Laura, because it is okay not to be okay, but it's also okay not to have to tell everybody either. But find somebody that you can confide in, because I think some people then think that, people deal with it differently. And again, no judgment. But I think when we talk about it's okay not to be okay, I think people then go, well, what am I meant to be putting it on social media that I'm having a tough time, or I'm this or I'm that? And if you want to, fine, again, no judgment. But know that it's okay not to be okay, but you don't have to tell the world. You don't even have to tell your family. You can confide in a friend or a counselor or someone that is close to you, but just it's better if you can at least talk to someone and tell them how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So among all the other health and wellness coaches, what sets you apart and how is your coaching style unique?
I think having had a lived experience of poor mental health, I think that helps me to understand overwhelm, because I was in complete overwhelm. I wasn't just dealing with grief, I was dealing with divorce. My ex-husband was in a new relationship. I was single. I was dealing with financial things. You know, I had piles and piles and piles of emotions and issues piling on top of each other. So I feel like that I can understand, relate to how that feels, but also having worked in corporate for so long as well, turning up to work if things have happened and you don't want to tell your boss or you don't want to tell the team what's going on. I've also had large teams that I've managed as well. And so having been either led by someone or being a leader, I've had to manage and negotiate and navigate that as well, because when things have been going wrong with me, or it's probably the wrong word, but things have been going on in my life, and if you're leading a team, then how much do you share? Because, you know, there's boundaries of being a leader and those sort of things. So I feel like that my 20 plus years experience in corporate, having been overwhelmed, having had mental health issues myself, I think that actually helps me to relate and to be able to connect with my clients. I'm also, I am who I am. Like, I am very authentic. This is me. And this is what you get. So I can be very honest. When I start dealing with my clients, it's like, okay, do you want me to be really tough with you? Or is this tough love? Or is this just love and compassion and we work through it? How do you want to work with me? And so that's a really nice way to set the boundaries of what type of coach do they want me to be. But I think it's just, this is me, and people really like me. And
Oh yeah,
I seem to resonate with people.
and I can see why. And I connect with people that are more authentic, and I think most people do. Because no one wants to sit there trying to support them or help them out of their issue that's never even come close to experiencing it. I mean, you can read, you can get degrees, but unless you've had that experience, then, and I don't use understand, but how can you even possibly relate to what their challenges and stuff are?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And you and I had a conversation about that word, understand and relate. And I love that. I love the differentiation that you've got for that. And it's something now that I'm very mindful of when I'm talking, is that how can I relate to the person, or how can they relate to me? There are some things that I can understand on a basic level, but I agree with you, particularly when we're talking about emotions and mental health. Just because I've been in a dark place, it doesn't mean that what I've experienced is exactly the same as anybody else. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I work very hard to only use relate and not understand, because I'm not in their shoes. I'm not in their skin. So I don't know how that feels for them. I can relate to the situation, or I can empathize or sympathize with them. But yeah. So in your experience, what are the most common challenges that women in business face in maintaining for their mental health?
The worthiness and knowing that they're good enough, and also having the courage to step up and to put their hand up, to go for a role or go for a promotion, stand up for themselves. And also, so that's the first thing. I think that it's really interesting because I've talked about this quite a few times with different people through my career, but a woman will look at, say, a job description, and there's 20 things that you need to be able to do. And if we can only tick 18 of them, we're like, oh, no, I can't do it, because I can't do 2 things out of that job description. Whereas if you get a masculine, very masculine male, he might look at it and he can do 1 thing and be like, yeah, I can do it, I'll wing the rest, And so it just fascinates me how different we are. And that really comes up in the corporate environment. And it's quite interesting because my husband is extremely masculine, but he's a thinker. And so he would look at the job description and go, I can only tick 19 things, so I still can't do it because there's 1 thing I can't do. It always makes me laugh. But I think that as women in business, we look at that and we think that we're not good enough. We don't have the courage. We're not confident enough. And I also think that sometimes we get beaten down because we may have gone for something once and it didn't work out. So we then think, oh, well, I'm not going to go for that again because last time this is what happened. And we really get in our heads. We start, as my niece says to me, Auntie Megan, stop shuddering all over yourself, because, I should have done this and I should have done that.
Should have this,
Yep. And so I think that we do that as well, is that we think, okay, well, even in the same organization or a different organization, I'll ask them, why are you not, what's stopping you from going to apply for this promotion? And it'll be, well, I tried that last time and it didn't work. And so that's where I work on the belief systems, and just because it didn't work the first time, it doesn't mean that we can't try again. And I'm not saying that we give up, but I think it's just because we don't think that we're worthy enough, because we don't think we're good enough, and then we get rejected once, that stays with us, so that then it stops us from moving forward to next time. I also think that in some organizations, when corporate is very masculine energy, that women feel that they can't be honest about what they're truly dealing with in life. So if the kids are sick, or their husband or partner or family members sick, and they're trying to run the house and they're trying to do a job and they're trying to do this, they often feel like that they can't be open and honest, because masculine men can sometimes be quite dismissive, can be like, oh, here we go again, the emotional roller coaster, those type of things I'm hoping are starting to dissipate within corporate, but I don't know whether it is. In a lot of places that I've worked, it is. The men are, very, very respectful. But I think that then that also makes us as women think, I've just got to deal with all of it, and I've just got to put on this brave face, and I've just got to deal with it. I can't talk about it.
Or you just be one of the guys. I've been in very male-dominated fields most of my life.
Yes. Yeah.
between Air Force and wiring aircraft or
Yeah.
unloading packages or working in warehouse. But yeah. And I always seem to excel better when I worked in more male dominated things. But yeah, but there was, times where, there's certain things you just suck up because you figure you're going to get ridiculed, for it. And you just be one of the guys and you fit in fine.
Yeah. And so it's about how do you, one of the weeks in my group coaching is about courage and bravery, and where does that show up for you? So where can you be courageous and brave and speak up and tell the truth and be authentic? And where is it just not going to work? And that's okay, because we can work with that, as long as you are not then saying, I'm not going to be courageous and brave anywhere in my life, but it might be one place in your life, and it's like, okay, well, let's work on all the other areas first. Often then that then goes through all the way through to work anyway. But when you start with yourself, that courage and that bravery, you've got to be courageous and brave to be able to step up and even work on it, let alone then implementing it into your life. But yeah, it's one of the things that we work on. It's really wonderful to see where someone starts and where they finish. It's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been a mental health advocate for quite some time now. Can you share any success stories that stand out in your career?
Probably my own. I think me. I
Sure.
think, I think from where I was to where I am now, I have come a very, very long way. And also there's a certain amount of pride that I have, particularly this year, in being able to talk about this now. Because up until this year, I actually wasn't talking about this. People were surprised. As I said, my siblings were surprised to understand that nearly 10 years ago, that's where I was. So I've done the work. I'm still doing the work. And it hasn't been easy. It's not been an easy road. But I'm proud of where I've come, and I love what I've learned about myself. Like, it's incredible. Like, it's just amazing, the stuff that comes up and that you work through. And there was some stuff that came up that I'm like, can't deal with that yet. Put it aside. And as you get better and as you get more confident and you start to feel better, then you feel courageous and brave to be able to face those things and work on them. So yeah, I'm incredibly proud of all of the work that I've done for myself, and I do feel that that now I am worthy and that I'm enough, and I just need to be me. So yeah, I've actually never admitted that before. So thanks for.
I think you're fine. I think you're doing an amazing job, and it's. I don't know, some people call it vain or whatever, but I'm like, there's nothing wrong with, admitting, because it is an amazing feeling when you have gotten to that point and you can feel the change in, within yourself. You might have even gone through that phase where other people were complimenting you and you didn't really realize that you had gotten to a state. But when you hit that state and you realize it, it's a whole different level. It's hard to describe until you actually experience it. But I think you're doing an amazing job, and I'm glad you have shared that with everybody.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. So what advice would you give someone who's recognizing signs of poor mental health in themselves or in others?
So if you're recognizing it in yourself, that's amazing, because that first recognition is fantastic. So try to have a think about who's in your proximity, who is somebody that you could actually talk to. If there's not somebody that you feel like you could trust or that you're brave enough to talk to, then I would suggest go to the doctor or go to a counselor and actually talk to somebody. Because so the first thing is recognizing it. Wow, that's already a big achievement. And then talking about it can then put you on a path of, okay, how do I work through this? If you recognize it in someone else, this is really interesting, because a lot of people put pressure on themselves of, I noticed that someone was a bit different. Ask them, are you okay? It's a simple question. Yep. And one of the things that we have here in Australia is mental health first aider. So I'm a mental health first aider, so I've been trained. And what that is that to recognize the signs if somebody is having an episode, or if they talk to you and they may be suicidal, what do you do? All of those sort of things. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we're taught is that I'm the person, I'm qualified to recognize, I'm not the person to then fix it. So I'm the person to recognize and to ask them, but then I then put them onto people who are the professionals to get them help. And so I think that what we find is people are scared to ask someone, are they okay? Because they're concerned, I think, that if someone responds and says, no, I'm not, what do I do with that? Do I have to fix that person? Am I, what do I do? But actually, if you do ask someone and they say that they're not okay, then talk to them and say, well, how can I help you? And do it together. But it's that being asked by someone means that, oh, okay, I'm really feeling really low, and somebody's actually recognizing it. And it means a lot to people, because it means that somebody is actually noticing that they've changed, or that they're not in a great place. But don't be scared to ask, because you can then point them in a direction of a doctor, or I don't know what you have in the US, but here in Australia we have Lifeline. We've got lots of places that you can call. But yeah, just don't be scared to ask someone if they're actually okay.
Yeah, there's multiple avenues and stuff. If everybody knows what they are in the U.S., but what as a mental health first aider, so you've asked someone if they're okay, and they tell you they're fine, but you can tell by their body language and their face that they're not. Mm-hmm. What would you do then? Would you alert somebody that might be able to talk to them or get through to them, or do you?
So what do you do? You normally then just continue to check in on them, and it's again, unless they are willing to make changes and get help, there's not a lot that I can do. And it's one of the things that people really struggle with. I think when I've spoken to people who have had people in their family or their proximity that have taken their own lives, that they're saying, I should have known, I didn't see the signs. There's a lot of guilt with people who are left behind. And sure. I think that as a mental health first aider, and just as a person who notices that somebody changes, or I would, if it's a friend, and you ask them and they say, I'm fine, I think you just need to check in on them, but maybe also check in with a couple of your friends and say, have you noticed anything? Have you spoken to such and such lately? How are they going? You can kind of do it. I wouldn't say, oh, I'm really concerned about da-da-da-da because of this. I would do it subtly, because then you might find that 3 or 4 of your friends in your group are all noticing the same thing. But I think it's just checking in with them, making sure that they're okay. Sometimes that's all that you can do. And maybe that's all that person needs, is just to know that someone, and maybe you check in with them a couple of times and they keep saying they're fine. And depending on your relationship, you say to them, well, actually, I've noticed that I don't think you are, and this is what I'm seeing. And ask them the question, now that I've said that, how does that make you feel? It's just about having a conversation.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, there's only so much that we can do for somebody. Unfortunately.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Megan, we are almost out of time. So I have on here. So is wellnesswhileworking.com.au, is that the best way for people to contact you?
Yes. Yep. They can contact me on there. There's a contact me page. And I also have an Instagram and a Facebook, and it's under Wellness While Working as well. So they can contact me there as well.
Okay, wonderful. And I really want to thank you for taking the time and sharing that with everybody. And again, I think you are doing an amazing job, and I'm glad you decided to share that with everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. And I've had I love these conversations. It's fantastic. Yeah, what a delight. It's beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, everybody, that is all we have time for today. We will see you next week. Just as a reminder, you can go to youtube.com at Mindful Mondays with Laura Cross. You can subscribe and turn on those notifications, and that way you can catch this interview with Megan North at any time and a whole host of other amazing guests that we have either previously shown or ones that are coming up. But I want to thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next week.